not just a source of protein. Okay. And then the other thing about this with eating and supplements, so I work with a lot of people that take supplements, that want to take supplements, spent many, many, many years working with baseball, lots of different teams, none of whom won a World Series. The Pirates stink. We were actually married in 1979, and our wedding was the day after the Pirates won the World Series. Willie Stargell will forever be the hero in my heart because it was my husband's bachelor's party. He's like, oh, please win, please win, please win. And they did. But, since then, it's just been dreadful. But nonetheless, I've had a lot of players that come in and say, my cousin gave me this. It's in a plastic bag. There's no label on it. Like, let's throw that away right now because we don't know what is in there. All right. But when we think about these things, I need this amino acid supplement, branched-chain amino acids, because it has all these things in it. Look at all the things that are in there. Look at the amount of what is in a piece of chicken, double or triple. So those amino acid supplementations are not necessary unless somebody has short gut syndrome, malabsorption syndrome. That might be a reason to take them. Otherwise, it is not the same as eating food. That was my public service announcement for today. Okay, all right. So this idea of being in the know with your pro, yeah, most of us are thinking about it. We want to be aware of it. Some of my players say, how about high-protein beer? Like, how about not? How about maybe we drink a little bit less beer? That never goes over well. But nonetheless, this idea of we're hearing it more, we're seeking it out in many different ways. What about fiber? 2024 was the year of the F word. Many different Fs we could fill in there, but it was also the year of fiber, and that is continuing into 2025. And just to put this into perspective for you, for men under the age of 50, it is 38 grams of fiber a day. Over the age of 50, it's 30 grams of fiber a day. That is not a tiny amount. For women under the age of 50, it is 25 grams a day, and over the age of 50, 21 grams a day. So if somebody says, well, I'm really going to cut back on my carbohydrates, you're not going to get the fiber. There is not fiber in meat. It isn't there. It comes from plants that we eat. And this is really important for transit time. It's really important for the microbiome of doing the things that support a healthy gut. We have to consume enough fiber. And ideally, it is more from food sources because that gives you a more diverse makeup of the type of fiber that you eat, as opposed to a supplement that's going to be typically just one type of fiber that is there. So it is a gradual increase. If you think that you're a person right now that doesn't consume a lot of fiber, please don't double it or triple it tomorrow. Bad idea. And also, when you do have more fiber, you need to consume it with enough fluid. So some people use the powdered fiber supplement, and they don't mix it in enough water. Bad idea. That can actually create a tremendous amount of GI distress. We can talk about that if you want in detail at any time. Okay, so the other things here is just to show you what is in different foods and the fiber content that is there. So a lot of people think, oh, no, cereal is a processed food, it's in a box. Yes, because how would you find cereal otherwise? Oh, look, the Wheaties are just strewn on the floor and that makes it natural. No, that makes it a mess and not healthy. So when we think about that, some of the cereals that it's a bargain. A cereal that typically has the word bran in the title is a pretty good indication that it's going to give you more fiber that is there. A lot of the beans, great sources of fiber. Fruits and vegetables, this is where we get them, from the skin as well as from the flesh. So it is critically important that we have enough. Okay, and I mentioned this, and just to say it again, I would use the word a little differently. I don't think any of us are going to live a life without any processed food, unless it's like, all right, no, I'm just going to grow my own wheat in the backyard, and then you're still going to mill it because you can't just eat it as it grows out of the ground. If somebody says, I'm milking my cow, hopefully there's some pasteurization going on because that is an issue when we look at bacterial contamination. If somebody says, I'm slaughtering my own meat, there's still some degree of processing that needs to go on with that. It's not a bad thing. Am I saying to you every food that is processed is healthy for us? No. But what I am saying is there's kind of too big of a circle around this and say, don't have any. It would take you a tremendous amount of time to cook. You can then buy a dry bean. All right, well, that dry bean still needs to be picked. But you can't eat them dry. You have to cook them because human bodies can't digest them if we eat them dry. So these are the types of things that we need to think about a greater, decision about what is a processed food. Okay, and then the other one here is sugar. And yes, a lot of people are trying to cut back on it, but most of us don't have that sweet taste surgically removed. We like it. And actually, it's not just one part of the tongue that is the taste for sweet. Inside of the tongue map, we also have taste receptors in our esophagus and a few down here in the stomach. So unless we're having all that removed, chances are that maybe we want to have something sweet. It's not a bad thing. Sometimes people don't feel that their day is complete unless there's something a little sweet. Who feels like that in this room? Yes? All right. Shame on me. No shame on you. That's a good thing. That's a great thing. However, let's think about what is in food, and not all sugars are the same. So for instance, when we think about lactose, that is the sugar that is found in milk naturally. It is there. When we think about fructose, that is the sugar that is in fruits and some vegetables. It's there. It wasn't added. Nobody injected it in. It's there naturally. When we think about maltose, that is the sugar that is in grains that we choose, all kinds of grains, including things like quinoa and rice, not just pasta, bread, cereal. When we think about the oligosaccharide, longer-term carbohydrate molecules, that is in fruits and vegetables. That's not the concern. What it might be the concern is some of these other things. Well, I don't use table sugar, but I use coconut sugar. Good for me. No, it's the same as using a table sugar. If you use molasses or honey, it's the same as using sugar. The body isn't processing it any differently, and it doesn't make it inherently bad. A lot of this is the quantity of. How much room does that occupy in what we choose? So, this whole idea of never again will I eat anything sweet, we will have a planet of very miserable people. Mark my words. We don't want to do that. And then the other thing I want you to think about is the brain. Kind of what are we doing for our brain? Are we draining it? Are we straining it? Are we training it? And there is a lot of research. The book, The Mind Diet, is excellent and really is a great compilation of some of what is recommended right now from the standpoint of taking care of the neck up, not just the neck down. So what are those foods that tend to make a difference? The omega-3 fatty acids are the fats that are found primarily in what we call oily fish. They're also found in people like putting chia and all this stuff, but chia seed is not the same. It doesn't have the same amount of the omega-3 fatty acids as does the oily fish or a fish oil supplement. B vitamins are a component of that. So people that say, I'm not going to eat any grains at all, no bread, no cereal, most of those foods are actually fortified with B vitamin. So we could run the risk of not having enough B vitamin depending upon what we're doing. Leafy greens are a big one. And even some of the recent studies, a half a cup of leafy green a day might keep some of the brain-losing properties away. So maybe more so than an apple is to do the leafy greens. Things that are antioxidants within foods, that's coming primarily from fruit and vegetable. They are the defense mechanism for the cells of the body and also may help to prevent some of that aging that occurs. Magnesium, some people supplement with it. We can also get that in food. Where's magnesium? Chocolate. Yes! And it's also in nuts and grains. Those are the major sources of magnesium. Vitamin D, I think everybody needs to know your D levels. You can't tell by looking at yourself. It's a blood test. There's no way around that, but it's really important to know that level because indeed it might have a role to play in terms of cognitive functioning. And then there are certain herbs that might be helpful. There's a lot of products out there on the market like Prevagen, et cetera. There's no science behind them, unfortunately. There is science behind some of these things. The rates of Alzheimer's in India are significantly less than they are here. Now, that's not all related to diet, but there have been some fascinating studies. Turmeric, which is the active ingredient in curry, it's what gives it the beautiful yellow color. If you buy it fresh, it looks like a little finger. It's a beautiful orange color on the inside. Ginger, not ginger ale, not a ginger snap. So we're talking about using the ginger itself as the root. Sage, rosemary, cinnamon, and saffron. So those types of things may indeed be helpful. So, and blueberries, another one, yes. Blueberries, cherries, I know Maine has a lot of blueberries. We talked about using blueberries for one of the recipes, but we couldn't make that work. So you could do that if you wanted to. So we want to think about being an aficionado. And the acronym for this is SMASH, like Smash Mouth. What are the fish that make the biggest difference when we're looking at doing things for the brain and also to decrease inflammation? It is S for salmon, M for mackerel, A for anchovies, S for sardines, and H for herring. Oh my God, most of those are processed because they're in a can, and that's fine, and it's okay. And there is a benefit because we're not always buying them fresh that way. They work, and they actually contain the EPA and the DHA that make an enormous difference for the body in terms of supporting brain health. Yes, you can do fresh salmon. Yes, you can do frozen salmon. None of that changes the amount of omega-3 that's there. Now, some people do tuna. You could, but it has less omega-3 in it. So it's really those ones on the top that have the most. And those are fish people either like or don't. Are those the fish that are smellier? Yes, because it's an oily fish. Or we could supplement. And when we think about supplements, and this GoEd or alwaysomega3.com, tremendous resources that are there as well, is again, some people use things like walnut, chia, flaxseed. They have ALA, omega-3. That's not really the one that impacts the brain. It's the EPA and the DHA. So if you say, I'm allergic to fish, I don't like the fishy taste with a supplement, I want to do something that's plant-based, you do one that is algae. It has to be algae. Otherwise, you're not really getting the benefit of it. So we can buy flaxseed oil. It definitely has a laxative effect. It will not give you enough omega-3. Again, critically important that we are smart about what it is that we do. Okay. The other thing I wanted to mention, because we're running out of time, is what is low cost but also nutrient rich. Because let's face it, prices are not great, and they continue to go up, and they do, and that's frustrating. And that probably isn't going to be changing. I wish I had an answer for you. I don't. So what can we do to help to preserve that hard-earned money that we buy is to think about those items that give us a better ROI without such a high price point to them. So in terms of protein, what kinds of things? On the top is using milk. Why? Because you're getting a lot of nutrient for a relatively small cost, and the price of milk has remained steady. I'm talking dairy milk, I'm not talking about plant milk here. Using something like dry milk, I do a lot of recipe development, and when I'm working with active kids, the idea, you can go out and buy a bar, right? And they're not inexpensive to buy many of the bars. Some of them are really expensive, and they taste like the bottom of a shoe on a good day. And so if I'm trying to increase the amount of protein, I'm using powdered milk in there. It's a lot less expensive than some of the other protein things that are out there. So that's one, and it can be shelf stable. So it's kind of the wealth on the shelf is a really important thing. Eggs, very reasonable price point. The whole egg. There's no reason not to eat the whole egg unless you simply don't like the yolk. The majority of the nutrients are in the egg yolk, not the white. The white is just 100% protein. Canned fish or canned chicken. It doesn't always look pretty, but if I'm doing something like a chili, I don't need to have beautiful chicken breast. It's all getting cut up. So we use a canned one or use a frozen one because oftentimes it is less expensive to do so. Beans, whether they're in a can or whether they're dry, that's an inexpensive protein source. TVP, which is texturized vegetable protein, actually starts with tofu and then you dry it. So you're left with something that looks like crumbles. It doesn't have any taste by itself. I do a vegetarian chili with it. When I add in a tomato sauce and other things, it reconstitutes. So then the look and the feel is like meat at a fraction of the cost with a significant amount of protein. Peanut butter, it's not a great source of protein. It does have some. So if I want to up the protein content of peanut butter, I'm not buying one on the shelf that's a high-protein peanut butter at $5 or $6 a jar. I don't think so. But I will add some dry milk powder into it. Oh, and now I have a high-protein peanut butter. So that's a pretty easy thing to do. Ground meat, frozen fish, buying yogurt in larger containers and then portion it out. That's a lot less expensive than when you buy the individual one. And even things like cheese, because there's no waste. So part of this is not just the cost of the item, it's how much are you throwing away, because that is definitely food down the drain. In terms of produce, kind of the benefit of things that are canned is you don't have things to throw away. So I won't ask for a show of hands here, but I know a lot of people, they make broccoli, and it's like, okay, they cut off the florets, toss to the rest. You've just thrown half of what you paid for. And so when you buy something that's already chopped, that work is done for you. You're going to use what is in that bag or in that can instead of throwing it away. Bananas, apples, cabbage. This is the year of the cabbage. And, cabbage is also a very, very low-cost item. Maybe not always cabbage soup, but there's lots of different things we can do with cabbage. Canned tomatoes. I live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. You're all here. It's like fresh tomatoes at this time of the year, not so wonderful. So canned tomatoes provide the same nutritional value with a greater flavor to them. And then things like soups, spaghetti sauce, salsa, and then in terms of the grains, these are the things that oftentimes cost less. Now, what costs more? Name brand item. They cost more. When my kids were little, and I used to torture them all the time, Halloween, we're giving out baby carrots. Both boys would get like their little bag and say, we are leaving this house. We are not going to be here anymore. But they would want whatever cereal it is. It's like, okay, buy it. We'll buy the generic version of it and then save the other box. Nobody knows. It's the difference in cost. It's the same food item. I'm telling you. Torture, all the time, torture of what I did with them. But these kinds of things, I could use pancake mix. I can buy a high-protein one. I'm going to pay more for it. Why don't I just buy a regular pancake mix and mix some dry milk powder into it, and maybe even some peanut butter? So things like this can actually be time-saving, and I know I'm getting that. Okay, so last thing we're going to mention it very briefly here is the idea of exercise, because I could talk all day long. We'll have to come back for part 2. So when we think about exercise or movement, what we would define that to be, it's not one way to the exclusion of all else. It might be HIT, for hanging in there. Maybe that's what HIT means. High-intensity training, some people like to do it because you get a more intense workout in a short period of time, and then you can't walk afterward, but so be it. When we look at insistence on resistance, to me, that's not pushing yourself away from the dining room table. That's lifting stuff. Lifting stuff. Now, in the Chiefs and the Steelers locker room, Steelers used to do shirts off Friday, and let me tell you something, not a pretty sight. Put your shirt back on. Oh, that's all muscle. I don't think so. It's wiggling. But nonetheless, the idea of lifting weights, for them, the dumbbells start at 50 pounds, and then it kind of goes up from there. So we have to do something that works for us. But some people you saw using the band, or some people do weights, some people do machine. It is actually number one on the list of priority right now. It doesn't mean we couldn't be on the treadmill or some other thing, but the resistance training is critically important because that's what preserves our muscle. Cardio activity does not do that. So for the people that are calorie obsessed, oh, I can't measure how many calories I burned when I lifted weights. Precisely, you can't, but you're getting a better ROI because of what it's doing for the skeletal muscle and the bone of the body. Definitely things that help us relax. That's not in my vernacular. I really don't know how to do that at all. I try. But somebody ties me to a chair. Okay, relax, and then we're up again. But whether it's yoga or Pilates or bar or something like that, that's also part of flexibility, which we lose if we don't use. And on your terms. Even gardening, it's a great activity. Being in the kitchen, it is micro movement. It works. It's a way of helping us be physically active. And last thing is the idea of NEAT. NEAT stands for non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Fidgeting more, not sitting as much. No, I'm running after a kid or I'm doing something else. Yes, because all of those things add on to the day of helping us move, not just in our body, but for our brain as well. So, with that, I'm going to stop for now. I have 2 breakout sessions. We're going to do the Nutrish and the Delish in your lunch and snack dish. I want to thank you all for listening to my craziness this morning. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right. Everybody better be sipping with our friendship bracelets. You've got a little bit of time right now until your session starts. Yeah? Okay. All right.